the language of silence before I learned how to use my own voice. Not the peaceful quiet that brings comfort, but a heavy silence. The kind that presses on your chest and teaches you which words are safe to say and which thoughts should never be spoken. Respect was not something you earned. It was inherited, passed down without question. Like furniture, no one was allowed to move. Rules existed without explanation. Questions were dangerous. Curiosity learned to shrink and disappear. Elders were always right, not because they were wise, but because the tradition demanded obedience. Some days the house itself felt like it was watching us, reminding us of our place. Doors closed without warning, rules appeared suddenly, bodies became something to hide. Voices became something to lower, and within these walls, abuse existed quietly, sometimes through raised hands, sometimes through cruel words, and sometimes through constant fear. The harm was real, but we were taught not to name it. We were taught that silence was strength, that forgiveness should be quiet, that endurance meant survival. Outside the home, judgment arrived before understandings. Last names carried weight. Caste decided who belonged, who was respected, who could marry whom, and whose pain mattered. Some doors opened easily. Some doors never opened at all. And still, we called this tradition. We were expected to carry it without question. But love doesn't demand obedience. Respect doesn't grow from fear. And silence may protect some people, but it also hides harm. It hides abuse. It hides pain. It hides the part of us that most needs care. Our culture is like a river. It gives life, shapes identity, and creates belonging. But rivers can flood. And when they do, they often cause harm to those closest to them, especially children who were never taught how to survive the current. I love my culture. I love its language, its food, its festivals, its warmth, its sense of family. But loving something doesn't mean ignoring its harm. Love doesn't require silence. Love doesn't mean pretending pain doesn't exist. I remember living inside invisible rules, folding myself into spaces that felt too small. I remember measuring my worth by standards I never agreed to. I remember watching fear pass through the people I loved and not knowing how to stop it. But even stone cracks under pressure. Even rivers change their path. Silence can't hold everything forever. Courage begins quietly. It shows up in small moments. It reminds us that we do not have to carry this alone, and that we don't have to inherit every shadow. I imagine a home where children can speak why without fear, where bodies are respected, voices are heard, and hands are never raised in anger. A home where love feels light, not heavy. Courage doesn't always shout. Sometimes it looks like refusing to stay silent where abuse once existed. Sometimes it looks like teaching the next generation that their bodies are not shameful, that their questions aren't dangerous, and that their voices matter. Sometimes it means recognizing what is broken in tradition and choosing to care instead of silence. We are the generation standing between on what we inherited and what we will pass on. We didn't build these with walls, but we decide whether they still stand. Change doesn't mean destroying the past. It means learning from it and shaping something better. Love your culture, respect your elders, but don't let tradition excuse harm. Do not let fear decide whose story is worth telling. Small acts of courage matter. Small refusals to accept silence create space for others to breathe, to speak, to heal. We can carry our culture forward without carrying its harm. We can honor where we come from without losing ourselves. Silence may have taught us, but courage cannot be controlled. Once it begins, it grows. And in choosing to speak, we become more than tradition. We become the river, we become the light, and we become the voice. Thank you.